Baby, are you guys ready to get the tea about why I quit? And the reasons I'm going to tell you is because I am a social worker, because I also am a military service member who served in Iraq. And I know that this is a social injustice that has happened, and because I can speak on it. A lot of times people get abused at jobs and they leave quietly and don't speak about it. I can't allow that to happen because I'm probably one of many where this has happened to. So I'm going to tell you what happened and what was the straw for me that made me end up resigning and not even being able to give them 2 weeks because of what they did to me. So let me explain. If you don't mind, let me get a sip of this tea. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, Friday last week, I had, which clinical folks will understand this, and I want you guys to know, an admissions into hospice in Maryland. And I had admissions that I had to do. 4 admissions I had left at the end of the week, as I had almost 10 admissions for the whole week of new patients on top of the caseload that I had. So I had scheduled early. I don't start till 8 o'clock, but I schedule appointments at 7:30 because I want to meet people where they're at as family members are struggling caregivers, and they need to be able to have time to talk about what they need and resources and me to work around their schedule. I didn't mind doing it. I'm an early bird anyway. So I got up and I started to plot out my route. And as a courtesy, I let my clinical manager know, and our new soon-to-be clinical manager know, what my schedule was going to look like for the day, because I already knew I was going to see 6 people in an 8-hour period. And it's fine because I know that I'm going to do it. I want to make sure everybody is seen and heard and assessed. So I did that. I scheduled everybody. I let them know. My boss said, well, you don't have to let me know these things, because of the role you're in. I felt good about that. I'm like, all right, bet. So I let them know. I went out to see my patients. Before leaving out, because this part's important, we had one caregiver that was struggling with some concerns she had about her mother. She sent me this long email that needed to be addressed. I forwarded it to my boss. And I was like, hey, can you guys help me with this? Because most of the stuff in there was about nurse stuff. It wasn't social worker stuff. Okay? And so I'm like, all right, me thinking that we could collaborate on this, I thought, all right. I explained that I was not going to have a lot of time to answer texts or any phone calls because I'm going to be present for all of the people that I need to see. Because within that 6 people, 2 of those people were actively dying and maybe had days, and I wanted to be present for their family members and to help them to navigate through their families dying. That's important to me. That I try to make space for that, and I wanted people to know so they didn't interrupt that. So I start to go see people. They receive this email. My boss starts blowing my phone up, telling me I need to make time in between breaks to call her back. Now, mind you, in between breaks, when you are a social worker on the road and you're seeing people, those breaks should be for you to potentially pee or eat. As I made space for all of those things, I did. And I thought, okay, I know I communicated to you in the morning, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful anyway. And I'm seeing people and people that are sick, in pain, and their caregivers need my attention right now. I asked you to help me. I call her back on one of the breaks for her then to tell me, you need to figure out how to be able to coordinate for this person, this caregiver, and you need to do it today. And I'm like, I can't do it right now. Can you help me? She says, well, no. And then she said, I want to talk about it further because the reason that I had called her back wasn't even about that particular person. It was because one of my patients was in pain. This person was in pain and they didn't know the nurse was going to come. And so I wanted him to not be in pain because that's not my role. And so I was just trying to get that information. So she's like, okay, well, call me back on your next break. So in between me seeing people, when I've already communicated with you that I'm on crunch time trying to see these folks, I called every break which didn't leave me room to try to do any self-care. But I called her back and she was busy every single time that I called her back. I even gave up my lunch break that I had, which was a small window, trying to call to listen to what she had to say about what was going on. And so all of this is happening all day long, where I'm trying to call them back, but then I'm going in to see other patients. So then at the end of the day, started at 7:30, 8 hours, right? Because I work 40 hours. I don't work overtime, and nor do they pay for overtime unless it's authorized, but that's fine. So towards the end, after seeing everybody, including 2 actively dying people, which I was so happy to go and navigate what they needed to know and do and celebrate the life of these individuals passing, right? Because it was a celebration and I helped them to understand that, right? I then go home to start putting in all of my notes and just take a breather. But at this point, I had a migraine and I was feeling very nauseous. My boss, I call her back at the end of the day. And I explained to her, because she says, what's wrong? And I said, I have a migraine. I've seen so many people today. I've called you back. Honestly, I don't have any more today. We're at the end of the day and I've already worked 8 hours. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm like, I don't feel good. I just don't. So she just kept trying to power through the conversation. And what really took me out was I then had to throw up because my head hurt. And I had to ask, could the conversation stop so I could vomit? And at the end of that conversation, as I'm asking, can I go and vomit? Not to ask, do I have to go and vomit? Is crazy. She then said, call me back after I vomit. That took me out. So after going to throw up, I laid on the couch because I was like, oh my God, I can't even get myself together to process that you said that to me. So I guess she realized she screwed up and she sends me a text and says, don't worry about it. We can take care of it on Monday. The disrespect. The disrespect. That hurts. I see people, I collaborate with the nurses, I collaborate with the chaplains. I make sure that I share any perspective of a social worker at all the IDT meetings, and I've helped the new nurses as they've come on to navigate and figure out the culture of hospice. And then this is how you mistreat me. That hurt. So I processed that over the weekends as I was heartbroken that you would talk to me like that. So on Monday morning, after our huddle meeting, when she goes, well, last week was such a crazy week, so let's just get down to what we need to cover about this patient. You're not even going to ask me how I'm doing? That's wild. Okay. So then she tells me, you need to set up a meeting with them. Okay, check, Roger. I'm a vet. It's fine. Check. I set a meeting up. The other clinical manager who misreads people all of the time tells me I'm not going to be able to set a meeting up with the director of this ALF because she's avoidant and she ignores everybody and she doesn't respond. I managed to set a meeting up with the caregiver and her in a matter of an hour. They told me the clinical managers told me whatever I set up, it would be fine. Go ahead and set that up. And we will change our schedules. The only thing that the director of the assisted living facility wanted was she wanted it to be virtual. And she said she would do it gladly. So I'm like, I don't know where that misread is coming from. Maybe it's because we are a little bit unprofessional. And maybe this is why we have such problems with her, right? Because we can't play around with a director's time. It's disrespectful. Okay, how about that? So after I then get acknowledgement from the caregiver and the director, I think we're good. And then my clinical director sends me a message separate from the email saying, well, you really made an effort. However, this is not how we want to do the meeting. We want it in person. So go back and tell them after you coordinated everything that that's not going to work. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. That's not okay. And that would make me look flaky to do that. Not to mention I've built rapport with the woman I've never talked to before and got her to do this meeting, the director who I've never met face to face or even talked to. And out of respect, I find that difficult to think that we're just going to disrespect this woman in her time and decide that we're going to just do something different. It's crazy. But okay. So I processed all of that. And I said to myself at the end of the day, I can't do this anymore. I'm hurt. I want to be able to show up for caregivers and patients, but I'm being abused by people that work in healthcare. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. So I went on and I wrote out my letter of resignation. I then drove to the center in Waldorf Hospice. And then I left my computer, cell phone. I left my laptop and bag. And then I pressed send on that letter. Because I was like, there's no going back for me. I resigned. And then I left. And it's so funny. All day long, my chest hurt. It was burning. I felt nauseous all day long. And the next morning I woke up with none of that. So I know I made the right decision. I'm sharing all of this because that was some BS. And you're not respecting other people is insane. As you are in charge of a staff, shame on you. So I say all of this because I just want you to know that we matter as social workers, as people, as employees, and because my job is to speak on things that are difficult and to share. So I hope that this was helpful for you, and thank you for your time. Please like and share, because I would really like my caregivers and patients to know that I did care about them, but I care about my own health and welfare as well. So I had to go, and I'm so sorry, because I'm going to say sorry to you caregivers and to you patients. You didn't deserve me leaving without an explanation, but understand I didn't have the time to leave you one because my life expectancy literally was starting to slide away from the stress. So I had to go. So thank you, people, and I appreciate you.